A dodgy knee.
If not, what they've done before is they've recorded a meeting and just uploaded it after the meeting's finished. So you can always do it that way.
Because we really ought to get started.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not it, is it?
That's it. Right. Is it on?
No, it looks like a previous video.
It's live.
Okay, I think we are there, folks. Apologies for that. Yeah, I've let Kirsty in.
Hello.
I believe we're live. Possibly. Perhaps.
I don't think the main screen is live, but we're on. I'll work on that. There should be any second now.
Okay, sorry about that technical hitch. Thank you for your patience and welcome to this meeting of the Environment Committee. Do we have any apologies for absence? Yes, we do. Councillor Schaefer and Councillor Wallace. Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? No. No. Okay, we will see the minutes of the Environment Committee held on the 12th of June.
Yes.
Yeah, agree with those. Thank you very much.
Good
And
decision.
we move on to number 4 on the agenda, which is request for support of grants application, the Energy Efficient Homes Fair. Presentation from Kirsty Shanahan, Buckingham Community Energy, and to consider whether to recommend to full council the support their application, which is Index A. So Kirsty, over to you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. Sorry that I'm not with you in person, but I'm actually in Spain. Thank goodness for Wi-Fi and broadband and all that. The reason you might be a bit baffled, I think, I'll start with explaining why I've put this to you. And the reason is that your community board, when it gets grant applications, it expects applicants to have reached out to town councillors, ward council, Bucks councillors, as well as the community board manager. And having worked with you guys before on the Green Fair and the Spring Green Fair, and also it's your building that we're having the fair in, I thought it would be just polite to let you know that we were going to apply, and also to give you some heads up and explain in case the community board or any of you that sit on the community board are asked to consider the application, so that you know where it's coming from and can in your own minds answer any questions. So that's why I have sort of approached you. I have actually made the application because obviously there's a time scale and it would be good to know before the event if we have got the funding, so that I can mitigate if I need to in advance. Hopefully you've all read my sort of intro report and are aware of what the fair is. So rather than talk at you, I thought it might be helpful if you have any questions or concerns. You may not even need to consider the grant application. I don't know whether you regularly see them or not. I know that I'm a parish councillor and I also sit on my community board, and we do get the grant applications to review, even though we don't make the decision, but we are allowed to input into the Bucks councillors' decision making. So does anybody have any questions for me about it, or any concerns or any questions? Oh, I can see a little hand in the corner. Hi there.
That's me. I'm John Harvey. Yeah, a couple of questions.
As a chair tonight, Andy. You decided to go on the chair.
Yeah, I can leave you with personal goes again.
Okay, so what's the projected budget for the event in terms of income and expenditure? And how much grant money are you applying for? Because the application's not come out to the rest of us yet. How did it work out financially in Princess Risborough? You said it was very successful. How did you measure success? And you also not mentioned what the actual entry cost is. And so the last question is, what was your turnover for last year? Because in the previous year it was about £71.
Yeah, so right, there are a lot of questions, and now I'm wondering how people do this and remember the first question. So the first question was, what is the overall budget? The overall budget is about £4,000, and that's what I've asked the community board for. And that includes marketing costs and staff costs and venue hire and things like that. So that's all in. And on top of that, there is some volunteer time, and we pay for the event insurance ourselves. The Bucks Community Energy pays for that. So we kind of match fund it to a degree with in-kind payments. I think your second question was how much, what are we expecting it to make?
No, what's the income? I mean, are you charging
the income?
presenters
Well,
any money?
So the income comes from, the other bit of match funding is hopefully we will get a full house of exhibitors and they pay a small amount to attend. So I think we're charging them £300 for headline sponsorship and £200 for an exhibitor stall. That's my kind of backup. If the worst comes to the worst and we don't get any grant funding, then at least we'll mitigate some of our costs by having exhibitor funding. It also makes sure that they commit and they take it seriously and they turn up and they know it's a proper event, and because otherwise it's unfair to the residents that come. We also, the tickets are already live and they're £5, which if I get grant funding, I would like to offer some for free. But I've set them at £5, which I think is pretty low. It's about the cost of a cup of coffee. We're not aiming at people who need income, who are on benefits or income support or low income, because Bucks Council kind of covers that. They have their energy doctors. There's the National Energy Foundation. So we're aiming at people who would be able to afford the insulation. They just don't know where to turn, or they are considering solar panels or an air source heat pump, and they can afford £5 for a ticket. And I think that's fair enough as well. It also enables us to get them to book online and commit a bit, so the exhibitors have somebody to talk to. I think your third question was about the success of Princess Risborough, was it?
It was, yeah.
So Princess Risborough, it was a success in the sense that we had 175 people come, which the Wade Centre, I don't know whether you know it, but the parking there is very challenging because it's next to a swimming pool and next to Saturday morning or Sunday morning football. But I think 175 people to an energy efficient homes fair, and it was our first one, and we didn't know how it was going to go. And I think we could possibly have marketed it a bit more, but everybody who came, and all of the speakers spoke to full rooms in the Wade Centre, and we also had all the exhibitors that were there. The feedback from them was that it was excellent. They were busy all day talking to people all day, and lots of people came up to me and said that was so useful. It was so good to actually be able to talk to a real person about my house and what my options are. So my measure of success actually is anecdotal. I ended up subsidizing it personally, but it was a learning curve, and at the end of the day I think that it was still really useful. Sometimes money is not the thing, sometimes it's the knowledge and the information and the reassurance. So that's why I wanted to do it again. Not just that, the reason we're doing this is actually because of climate change, global warming, and then obviously the energy price rises, which have meant a lot of people have been very worried about how to keep their homes warm. And I know the community board has a health and well-being objective of priority as well as an economic regeneration priority. And I'm trying to get Buckinghamshire to decarbonise their heat, reduce their energy use, but also help people who are really struggling a bit with the energy price rises. Now, I said I was aiming not at people who are on low incomes. There are a huge amount of people who are not on low incomes, don't get the grants, don't get the benefits, but they're just about managing, and energy obviously has been a really sort of a real worry for a lot of them. But fundamentally what we're doing here is trying to reduce energy use because of global warming. So that for me is the priority. As long as we break even, and as long as I can keep doing this and not get another job, you know, then that's what's really important. And I think, oh, I've forgotten what your final question was. I'm so sorry.
What was your turnover for last year? Because the one on the account is £71.
Yeah, so Bucks Community Energy has a wide range of activities. So our accounts is not just about the fairs and the other events that we do. We're actually working with Bucks Council on a solar project in Wendover for schools and local buildings like the Memorial Hall and the swimming pool and stuff. So I wouldn't, you know, our accounts are not, you know, we do a lot of things, and we're not old enough, or we haven't had enough turnover and revenue through. Most of what we get is grants, and it goes straight to third parties, or it goes straight to our self-employed people. So we're not sustainable at the moment. I do very much want to get to a point. I would love to be Gorcott Solar, of which I'm sure you're all aware, who have a lovely big community benefit fund, which they are using to put free solar on places. I would love to have access to that kind of thing. And that is my goal, so that I don't have to ask people for grants, so that we can run events alongside our solar projects, which also benefit the community. I hope that answers your questions.
It does, thank you.
Councillor Gately.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Margaret Gately. You've probably answered a couple of things I had in my head, like how much you were charging people, because that is an immediate barrier, isn't it? I do get that if people are booking online, then they are likely to turn up if they've paid a fee. And the other thing was, are you expecting people who sign up, you know, members of the public, to stay for all day, or just dip in and out, or?
Yeah, no, it's only for 4 hours, and there's a speaker schedule which will be published on the website once I've finalised it. So people can come when it suits them to hear the bits of it that they want to hear. What was interesting about Princess Risborough was that people did stay for at least 2 or 3 hours, and that was a longer show. I've shortened the time frame to make it not so onerous for the exhibitors and for me and my team. And as to the cost, do you know what, a really interesting thing happened at Princess Risborough, which was, so the ticket price for Risborough was £8, and Buckinghamshire Council sponsored some free tickets, and I put them on the website, and I said, if you can afford it, please pay. If you can't afford it, please have a free ticket. And we sold more tickets than people took up the free tickets. I thought that was really interesting, and I think what that says is that people value advice, and they value the opportunity to get the information they want, because people really do want to decarbonise. They really do want to do something about it, and they are they're happy to support endeavours which are doing that, I think.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. Right, so you've mentioned that the event isn't really put out to people on benefits, but if people on benefits attended, so in council or social housing, would they still get a good level of advice? That'd be one question. Because like people on benefits tend to have the most struggle, if you like, keeping their houses warm, especially as a lot of councils and housing associations don't like to keep their properties in good condition. So as somebody who lives in a social housing property, I would like to feel that I'd get the same advice as somebody that is living in their own home, if you like. You mentioned that grants go to a third party. Who's a third party? And why isn't the government covering this type of event? So, you know, you're a separate entity, but really the government or local council should be doing this type of thing. And finally, do councils have a stall at the event? So for people that are in social housing, if some of the stall holders aren't able to give information, the councils are there with their dedicated teams to say, yeah, this is what we can do, this is what you can apply for.
So the people in social housing and whatever their income, it's completely irrelevant what their income is, because they will get the same advice. The exhibitors are not there to do a sales job, particularly. They are, I mean, obviously they are there to if people want to then take it further, but they are there to give advice. And all of the people that I have on board so far, and I hope when I fill all the spaces, they all have a heart for the planet. I tend to try and work with people who are not there for their own profiteering, but they're doing this work because they believe in it as well as making a living. So, but they will never ask people whether they can afford it up front. They will talk at you ad infinitum about their air source heat pumps or their solar panels or their insulation, whether you like it or not, and regardless of whether you are going to buy anything off them. That's just the way they are. To your second point, why isn't the council and the government doing more? Well, I am completely with you. And I find it deeply frustrating that I have to spend so much of my time applying for grants and also banging on Bucks Council's door. And I know Robin is familiar with my face because I'm often in tech committee asking them why aren't they doing this and why aren't they doing the other. Now, I have invited the Energy Doctors, which is Bucks Council's team, to come along and run my energy clinic, because I was putting in, I'm trying to get funding to train up some energy advisors. So more than just people who know about switching, but more, you know, more technical advice for people. And I think Bucks Council are going to send along the Energy Doctors, even though they originally said no to me. But they have found that their energy doctors are operating in a very niche market and aren't busy enough, which I'm singing the I Told You So song to that one. But anyway, so I'm hoping that there will be the energy clinics. And of course, you know, that is a really good opportunity for anybody who's on in social housing to get advice or on low incomes. Yeah, so I completely agree with you. And the government, you know, I think the government and councils, some are doing loads. So if you look at Oxford District Council or Oxford City Council, sorry, or Oxfordshire, or over in Surrey, up in Manchester, in Birmingham, some councils are doing absolutely loads, and they're really supporting their community energy groups. Buckinghamshire Council, I'm waiting for a grant to come through, and they keep telling me that they're checking the legal stuff. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? But anyway, and actually the third parties we use are sometimes consultancies. So for solar, for example, I don't always have capacity myself to do all of the scoping for solar and the designs and everything. So I use a third party consultancy. Again, they work in the community energy space, so they don't charge an absolute arm and a leg. Trying to, you know, keep the costs down, but the fact is that sometimes I don't have enough hours in the day for everything I'm doing, so I have to use, and I'm self-employed into Bucks Community Energy because we don't have enough income to have a payroll at the moment. So we're very much, you know, trying to do what we can on a shoestring, and any help you can give would just, or the community board could give, would be amazing to help us do this. If you think it's important, we want to do it, and but we need support. You know, we can't do it by magic. So
yeah, thank you. Can I just ask one follow-up question? Yeah. So the third party that this money would be going to, is that information clear in your grant process application form?
Yeah, so in the grant application, I've got the whole budget, and it shows who's supplying what and what the cost is against each bit. So, so for example, the marketing is Bucks Community Energy. I actually do that. If I was employed by Bucks Community Energy, it would be Bucks Community Energy, but I do bill Bucks Community Energy because of just the way the finances are set up. So yeah, so I'm a third party, but I run Bucks Community Energy, if you know what I mean. So I don't know, I'm not entirely comfortable with it. I'd love to be employed, and then I could just say, yes, I work for Bucks Community Energy, but I have to have other work as well. So I've got to
thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else got any questions for Councillor Sturchfield?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for coming. Secondly, as you pointed out, I am a Buckinghamshire councillor as well, but I'm here as a town councillor tonight. you raised something which I think might give clarity to where I think you ought to be heading. Are you inviting the housing associations, which there are many in Buckingham, to be part of this meeting? Because if the housing associations take up this offer, that means that they could radically move quite a few properties forward to environmentally friendly position. And that would be, at least them attending would be a good thing. I do share your concerns about commitments of local authorities to environmental projects. I don't know how many times we can discuss planting trees and not watering them, and then returning to plant some more trees at the ones we've just planted. So I do think there's a lot of work to go there. You say that Buckinghamshire Council, and I'll ask the last thing, I'll ask them more then. Buckinghamshire Council supported you in one event. I didn't remember what that was.
Risborough.
And were they active in that, or were they passive?
Oh, well, that's a very good question. So they were a headline sponsor of Risborough, for which I was extremely grateful. And then they funded some free tickets. And then Councillor Williams was going, who is, as I'm sure you're aware, the cabinet member for climate change and the environment. He was going to come and speak, but at the last minute he couldn't. So he sent Gilly Jordan, Councillor Jordan, who is his deputy. So she turned up, but there was no other person from Bucks Council there. And I was really disappointed because I thought it was a great opportunity for them to have a stand and talk to the public and put their weight behind it. So this time I'm hoping to have a bit more representation, because Phoebe Risen has said that she will come with some and hopefully get some of the team along, as well as the energy doctors. But that was...
So you will take up the proposal to invite the housing associations. They may take it up, they may not. That way you get at the... Because the people who rent their houses can't make decisions about putting solar panels in, but their housing association can plan a business model to do that, and a business model around installation, because you're at a disadvantage when you're renting accommodation. The other area where it might be worth you approaching is the letting agencies in Buckingham, which do the private lettings. Because many people, unfortunately, can't get into social housing, so they're actually in private lettings, and those agencies might lean on might be interested, because that will bring down the cost to their tenants. Perhaps they might be interested in that.
Okay, could I? Yeah.
So to your point, if you can effect an introduction to any of the social housing providers in Buckingham, I would absolutely love to talk to them. But they're really quite hard to get hold of, and they don't really want to talk to people like me, because it means they have to do things to their properties to make them more energy efficient and warmer for people. So I would love to meet them, and I would love them to come along, because I think it would be absolutely brilliant for them. I don't know whether any are already effecting a program of energy efficiency. Do you know in Buckingham any of your?
No, oh no.
I think we can.
I think some of them are. I know that the houses opposite me, they've replaced the roofs on them because they and re-insulated the roofs, which are ex-council properties in Dadford, because they've were spending so much money on repairs that I decided it was a better thing to actually just replace the roofs on all of them. So it's now very obvious which ones are in private ownership and which ones are still housing association. I was going to ask slightly similar vein to what Councillor Sturchbury brought up, is where do you fit in with the private rental sector? Because there is a huge number of people that find themselves stuck in private rented accommodation. They can't get the landlords to do anything about energy efficiency unless the landlord can actually get a grant. I know that my loft was insulated because my electricity company paid for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lucky.
So the private rental sector is one of the trickiest ones, although the government was going to introduce the minimum energy efficiency standards, which landlords were going to have to comply with, and they kind of kicked that can down the road a bit, but it is coming in eventually, and that will be the tool that makes landlords comply, because unfortunately they almost never have their tenants' interests at heart, and if they aren't going to benefit from the bill reductions and they don't care about the planet, then they're really not interested. So there's government legislation coming down the line. To be quite honest, I think it's about, for me, it's about, with the resources that I have, it's about the low-hanging fruit. So it's about helping people who own their own property, or who have the kind of relationship with their landlord that they can do stuff. And in fact, even if you are renting, you can always get a smart heating control and TRVs, because that's a kind of small thing that landlords probably won't mind paying for. It's not that expensive to do, and that will help you control the heating. Well, this is the thing. So most landlords. So for me, it's a massive hill to climb, and it's a bigger battle. And I'm well aware of it, but I can't do much about it. I can only do what I can do. So I'm kind of going with the stuff that I can do, and then I'll worry about the bigger stuff in Bucks later. But I'm hoping that Buckinghamshire Council is looking at their Scope 3 emissions from social housing, because it is part of their remit where they pay the rent. They should be, and it will help them, because it will mean their tenants have more money and aren't such a, hopefully maybe aren't needing so much support if they, but they often don't see this virtuous cycle. I think that's the problem. So
yeah.
Just lastly, if you through the chair, if you email me the question you want over social housing to my Buckinghamshire email address, I'll endeavour to find some information. It's much easier if you email me asking for it and what you want, than me try to write something on your behalf.
okay.
And then I can adopt it to North Buckinghamshire and send it on, and try and help you in that respect, because the cabinet member, in which case you've got to talk to, is Mark, and he's reasonably amenable, and always very polite to me. So we could move that forward if you wanted that outside the meeting.
Okay, I will drop you an email.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and talking to Kirsty.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to stay and listen to our further discussions, then you're more than welcome to do so.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go and feed the children. That's okay. But thank you so much for the opportunity. And anybody can email me if you've got any further questions that occur to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so in terms of that, what we need to do is decide whether we are going to recommend to full council to have a discussion as to whether we will, as a full council, support the application. Correct? Yeah. Okay, so
the question is for this committee to decide if they're going to recommend the full council support.
yeah. Yeah, so I think I saw John first, and then Margaret, and then Robin.
Well, I think we should. I think it's a good initiative. I'm not wild about them charging £5, but if that means they get more people signing up, and people definitely turn up, and that attracts therefore the stall holders, it's no bad thing. I can't quite get how she's going to spend £4,000 marketing it. It's like a huge budget to me.
Yeah.
But because it's a good event, people will come in anyway. She needs to be advised that Buckingham is a morning town. And don't dare, it's not worth playing on in the afternoon. So I don't know what scheduling is like. So I think we should recommend that we approve it. But with all the issues that have been raised this evening about social housing and the challenges there, I get the Buckinghamshire County Shire Council along. And support it, and kind of wonder why Princess Brisbane gets support, we don't, because they got subsidised tickets. Why haven't we? So that might be a question worth raising. But I think in principle we should support it.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, if that's a proposal, I'll second it. Yeah, I think it fits with our climate emergency action plan. Why wouldn't we support it? Definitely. I always have reservations about the charge because I think it is a barrier. But if people have bought tickets and they've paid for them, then they're more likely to come. Although with free Eventbrite registration, I think people do turn up to those, even if. But yeah. And I guess, I mean, I think that probably there will be some free tickets as well if people apply for them. So that's fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to support it. What we really should, it's very difficult for the person putting on the event to, as she demonstrated, I think quite adequately, get an engagement from other parties other than private. I think that's something that is regrettable, but in actual fact, isn't it? So it will lower the, if people take it from Buckingham and there's some advantage, it will help our climate action plan. What we can't guarantee is what the community board view would be of the application, because it will go there. But hopefully, if Buckingham Town Council see it as progressive, that will go in their favour. We're going to have a series of these type of things before we get where we need to, so it's a start, isn't it?
Anybody else? So we've got a proposal from John, seconded by Margaret. All those in favour? Unanimous. Okay.
That chat unanimous.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. So we move on to budgets. We need to see the latest figures. We've got any comments, questions, etc. Margaret and John.
I really find these difficult to understand because on the first page, 202 roundabouts, and it's got under 3 of them 100% and 1 of them 90.3. Now, is we talking about income from the roundabouts, or are we talking about expenditure? And how does one tell whether it's income or expenditure when it doesn't say?
Any code down the left-hand side that starts with 1. So the double roundabout number 1 is 1051.
Yeah.
So if the code starts with a 1, it's income.
Ah.
If it starts with a 4, it's expenditure.
Ah.
That's
Wow.
They didn't want you to know.
Just want to start with 3 there, the top 3995.
That's for the national insurance and pensions contributions and that.
Thank you.
You've earned your 3rd Weetabix already, Steve.
Oh.
John, did you have your hand?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave her in, sort of shoehorn in. Yeah, the solar panels on the roof of this building. I've been asking for more than 10 years now. Where the hell has it got to?
For our town park, I think. I know it's moving on slowly, but plans being made and things being looked at, but I would prefer that to our town clerk.
This isn't our town clerk.
Refer that issue back to the town clerk, because I'm losing the will to live here.
I can answer that one because we asked it recently, and I think it has to do with the electricity circuit board in the community centre isn't set up to take the solar powers.
We discussed it in confidence.
Okay, we asked questions in public. So.
Well, when you put it, I mean, you know, when I had solar panels on my roof, they put in the necessary kit so that it can be compatible. That's what happens.
Try back to
Shall I ask for an update?
Can we just
I'll put it on the next. Yeah.
kicking around a bit.
12 years.
Yeah.
Robin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 1017, devolved services, and that clearly means that they've transferred the monies over, and we are where we are. Is the 9% on the end the increase on the last year's projected budget?
What page are we on?
So
Page 4. I said that it was 10.
So the reason for that was because when we wrote the tree steps, they haven't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's exactly how I thought it was. Yeah.
So that is what the.
Yeah, and then 4055. 4055.
Page of 21, is it?
It's at the bottom of page 6.
So the depot alarm 240.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That is that as you thought it was going to be?
So I think we had some repairs on the door, and the sensors on the door broke, and the service. So I think that's taken.
Okay.
£17 over.
Yeah, I know. Just nothing great. So, and then on the issue which John raises on 1027, can I propose that we take that item to the next meeting, as it's might be involved in some of the discussions around the community centre because of the building and whatever. And because the two things are subject to each other, I believe. So I think that
I think they're very separate, Robin.
well, considering we discussed it in confidential at one point.
I wasn't there.
I was.
Because I
That's why I'm saying
yeah.
I suggest we take it to the confidential section of that meeting when we have
That's resources.
No.
No, to this.
This
Right,
committee.
sorry.
I'm just thought that we can do it in confidential, which allow a full, frank discussion about it. And at that point, those minutes have become public anyway. Those areas we can.
Just going to ask Claire, so the
Go back to Claire to
Just
get an
go back to
update on
Claire.
it.
Yeah,
And
Claire.
Yeah,
Be agendaed for the next
Yeah, I've
meeting.
got a request to ask Claire for an update.
yeah, right.
And to bring it forward on another agenda.
Yeah,
And I put in confidential and ask her for advice on that.
yeah. I'd be surprised if we want to. And the other one was 4011.
page.
And that's on page 8 of 21. That was the CCTV aspirations. Are they where we think they're going to be? So it's 280%. Obviously that's 280% spent out of a budget of whatever. Is that because we haven't had any in, or is that because we've decided to spend so much over? What was the decision rate around that? I know we talk about CCTVs, but they're not funded by Buckinghamshire Council, and they're not necessarily funded by the police. And we just need to have an explanation around that percentage.
We've got 1097, which is income, and then
Yeah, so that's offset by the grant
Yeah.
that was received. But you can't apply on our accounting system, you can't apply the income and the expenditure to the same line and for it to give you a balance, unfortunately. So whilst it shows that we've overspent on that budget, actually what we've done is received income towards that from the grant.
Thank you. That's what I want to know. But it's worth discussing it, because if you look at the end line, it looks like we've anyone read.
it does say in the notes.
I know, but anyone reading it in the public, being as we've only just been identified by acting clerk today, which is the when you read income against expenditure. I think it's a bit much to expect a member of the public to read that and then assume that we hadn't overspent. That's why I said it.
Robin?
Yeah,
Margaret?
thank you, Fran. Page 8 of 21, Chandos Park toilets, 4709 maintenance. We're a third of the way through, and we've now 91.6% of the year's budget spent.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had an issue with the sewage pump that needed fixing very urgently. It has been fixed. It came in April, May time. So, yeah, it wasn't planned for.
Robin?
Lastly, Chairman, I think 40 on pages, which I'll go back at the top, 8 of 21. It says an expenditure on section 106s. What I'm conscious of is most of the discussion around section 106s tends to be in the planning committee, where we get the report about what monies are in the section 106. Most of any expenditure around section 106 will probably be in the environment committee. So I think it would be worth at some point dovetailing those connections between the expenditure, and because we have lots of discussions around, have we got the section 106, have we got it, what's in it? I think we need to at some point in this committee discuss what's in the section 106, noting that we had that situation through you, Chair, that we lost from section 106, you remember, for the car parking, because we couldn't equate it to anywhere. Just at some point to sort of discuss which ones are relevant to this committee's expenditure, so that we as councillors understand in this committee what monies might be accrued in there for us to make decisions around uplift, improvements and whatever, and try to collate something going forward in this committee, because anything was put into a section 106 for any sorts of projects like that will probably accrue to the finances of this committee, but they seem to be discussed as a planning issue. And I think it's probably wise that we start to discuss them in here to get, not that we can influence those decisions, but we can actually start to understand where the money is.
We're actually in the early stages of trying to do exactly that, trying to get a group of the officers together to just thrash out what money we've got, what's urgent and what's not urgent to do, and actually have a plan that we can propose to members.
Thank you, that's reassuring. Just because I go everywhere and they keep talking about spending section 106 money in other places, and I wonder where they're spending it from.
I had John's hand up first and then Lisa.
Yeah, I think we're going to make sure that we're not duplicating discussion between the two committees. That's the whole one committee, that we keep that separate. And also we are discussing section 106 money today. We're talking about Rumbold's Fields and so on. So we're talking about, you know, when it's relevant to this committee, it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
But I look forward to the proposals from the officer team to make it more elegant.
Thank you, John. Lisa.
Thank you. The sewage pipe, you said it was broken. Is that covered under our insurance, or what Anglian Water take responsibility of that? Does that come out?
So it's actually the pump within the Chandos toilet pumped it to the sewage line.
Right, and
Because of the levels of the river and stuff, it had to pump it basically uphill to the main sewage line. So it does come under our maintenance start building.
but can we claim for insurance for that?
Maintenance issue.
Oh, okay.
Got
Right. Okay.
Because advice from a couple of different pump specialists, it's probably contended its life. So
Okay.
it's been there for a long time. We've got it, kept it going, but yeah, I'll bring it to.
So that's the need to look at registering for
Yeah.
Bigger maintenance issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Robin.
Just to say, I totally disagree with John's view. When budgeting for money and budgeting for expenditure and balancing stuff out, a large part of what the committee will be doing will be based on section 106. To leave it for the planning committee to discuss section 106 without us councillors understanding it is a big red flag. I'm really pleased Steve's going to bring it back to it. I would equate it, if it was my personal choice, for this committee and this committee only, if I was going to do it anywhere, it would be another page under earmark reserves, so members could ask questions around it if it was relevant. I don't think we'd have to discuss it at every meeting, but there will be changes in that. I'm aware that other people talk about spending section 106 on projects in the community. I think we need to understand what those section 106 are allocated for, what they may do and what they don't do, because if money is taken out of a pot for some other local authority on its, we won't be able to touch that money, and we don't actually hold the section 106 Buckinghamshire Council hold it on half. So I think it's a really big question and can be a really hot potato, and I'm not saying it, John, because I'm wanted to make work for the officers, and saying it because I want to protect this council.
Well, you're right, it's not held by us, and hence the next page, which is earmarked reserves, that doesn't show it there. Therefore, that's why we're undertaking this piece of work.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for what you did.
Okay. Are we done on the budget? Thank you very much. So, Bourton Park Bridge Repairs, verbal update from the estates manager. We're hoping for some good news.
Yeah, so just as of Friday, the repairs to bridge number 1 have been completed. And last week I got the engineer to inspect it and sign off. So that's all open and hunky dory.
Yeah.
Bridge number 2, which is the other bridge next to it, which we have issues with, is still open at the moment. And we are checking it very closely every week. To replace a few boards the other week on it. So it is not in the best of condition, as you may have seen. So we are keeping a very close eye on it. And if we need to close it, we are going to close it.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend more money keeping it going.
Yeah.
And I'm in the process of investigating and getting quotes for the removal of that bridge, and that will be brought back to this committee, maybe next table.
Thank you. I didn't see who was first. Go on.
All right, thank you.
Councillor O'Donnell.
I thought we'd taken a decision to close that bridge, have we not?
When needed. Yeah,
Okay.
when needed.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
And thanks for all the work you're doing on it, on both of them. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Chair. I think it's important. There was an awful lot of less than precise commentary around both these issues on social media, and also comment about those bridges. I think we're in a position now where we can be more factual and detailed about where we are with them. We've made a decision that as and when it's appropriate, the second bridge will come out. That's gone through and been agreed. We've also, thanks to your hard work, Lee, we've now got the other bridge into good working order. I think I would propose that we, with the chairman, work a careful press release around the two things together, because I think communicating that we've repaired and maintained the bridge is very important, because that shows that we're maintaining our assets, and then discussing about that we recognise the other asset will at some point go. When you just repaired one bridge, it's a good time to talk about the fact that you might take the other one out at some point, so that you can have an intelligent discussion around the thing at a strong point, rather than at a later stage having to do a discussion about the fact that you've taken the bridge out. And then people saying, well, you mended the other bridge, so why didn't you mend this bridge? I think we're in a strong position now to make a proper communication with the chair and the officers to communicate that information properly. So I'd like to propose we do a press release on that.
Any views on that? John?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll have a press release about
We'll
the
have
bridge.
to vote on it.
Okay, are you proposing that?
Yes.
You second it, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Unanimous today?
Yeah.
It's about managing this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. John?
A couple of other points. One is when the bridge is finally taken down, will we be using the wood for the bonfire? It may not be compatible, I don't know, just a question, but
We haven't decided definitely to do it. If there's any other use for it,
yeah, I know.
we will, but it could be.
Okay, all right. I think we discussed that last time, and we realised that we do nothing with it practically. The other thing is that the bridges seem, all the ones over the river seem to have been constructed at a similar time. I'm talking about there's the other bridges in our park. There's also the bridge over the river on the university side near the Flosh. And there's also the bridge that connects the university campus with Chandos. Do we happen to know whether the university have inspected their bridges? And do we know if they are as secure? Because obviously we've had to spend a lot of money repairing the ones that are on our ground. Have they done their own assay as well and checked that they're safe?
I haven't discussed it with them directly, but I know they did some work on the one from Chandos to the university 4 or 5 years now.
Years ago.
They did quite a bit of renovation work on that one.
All right.
But I can't say for the other one.
Okay, all right.
Councillor Sturgeon.
I think it's a good question, but there's a danger that both those, one bridge in particularly, the one from the Chandos Road, both is completely on university land. Second bridge would have been done before we took over the park with consent to the owners of the park for that, and there would have been an agreement that they put it across. I think that the university must have their own sinking fund or plan of action for these things, because it's in their interest that the students get free movement. And if Lee's following it up, we're not careful, we can end up giving the assumption that we've got some financial responsibility for them, which we haven't.
I think at the end of the day, what the university does with their bridges is up to the university.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's not in the remit of this committee to be discussing what the university is doing or not doing with their bridges.
I'm merely saying it's part of the circular walk, it's part of the permissive way, people in the town use it all the time, but we have a responsibility to townsfolk to ensure that they're safe. I'm just saying at some point Lee might have a conversation with his opposite number at the university and just find out if stuff's going on, but if there's a need, that's fine. I absolutely am not saying the town council should bear any financial responsibility, of course I'm not saying that.
Robin.
The accessibility and rights of way are a Buckinghamshire Council responsibility. They have a rights of way department to do rights of way and a funded officer team to look at it. I think if we have to have a discussion about that, it's probably better that they take that discussion up if it becomes an access issue to rights of way. They should be aware of all the circular walks and stuff in Buckingham, but they are the people who have the legitimate powers to be the rights of way kept open and whatever. What we will find that both the difference between the rights of way, what you perceived rights of way and what they currently are, is the university rights of way permitted rights of way, not statutory right of way. There's a big difference in law around that. But if there is a concern when it comes, I think we should use them to have that conversation, because our officers will end up doing the work and then still have to ask them for the conversation. So I think it's we should point that towards the statutory responsibility authority, and because they will know on their maps what they are in rights of way. And my memory suggests that the one through University Car Park is only permissive right of way.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's no basis of anything that there is an issue with any of those anyway. So it's we could go around in circles about it, I think. Anything else on the bridges?
No, just can we record our thanks for you, Chairman, of the work being undertaken?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, and the team.
And bridge number one looks very nice.
Yeah.
To walking on a new bit of path when that goes in, and walking across the bridge once it's been completed. Okay, so we move on to new cemetery revised plan report from the Estates Manager. Mr. Lee, over to you.
So this is bringing the new cemetery allotments plan back with a costed a bit of a breakdown on the costs and sort of final figure for what we need to borrow for the plan. So there's a few details about that, and it's to recommend to full council the revised plans, and then to continue with the public consultation for the revised plans with the projected new costs, so that we can move on and then bring it to the next one.
Firstly, thank you for bringing this report, Lee. Now, as you said last time, you weren't in a position to bring this report because you were working on the costs, and I presume that you been already in the office, you brought the cost more in line with what we wanted to, and I thank you for that. Happy to propose that we recommend this to council, because why wouldn't we? Would be the next question. And I think the other questions are not for the meeting anyway, but I'll ask you outside the meeting. But I do think that we've got to move on. We've precepted for this money. It was part of the council's precept. It's funded and costed. So we had to make sure that when we have this conversation, that people are aware that this is a costed project, which is precepted for, and isn't an additional cost on the residents, because they've already had it in the last year's council tax. So I think we have to be very careful when we communicate this, because what I can imagine those people who are unable to read this will suggest, well, why are they going to be charging us this amount of money? We have to make sure that any communication around it is properly niched, because I can imagine people who may not be so empathetic to the cemetery project may dress this up as a different place of what it appears in this report.
Thank you, Robin. Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a really helpful report. Thank you. I apologise if I've missed it, but have we actually purchased it now?
So the land purchase is still going through. We did make a bit of progress. So there's a lot to and fro about the transfer agreement. You didn't reply to me last week on a reply. It's with their solicitors at the moment. So I thought we're almost there, but it's not quite.
Because is it over optimistic to say that work will start in the spring?
Well,
if we haven't even got to land yet.
So we're poised to do that from the planning company side. They can put planning in almost at the stage that they could put an application in for detailed plan, get that moving, because that takes time. And if it's to plan, we can get them work plan. That is, we could do that if we go for it now. This sort of season as well, we've got to try and avoid the winter for the groundworks and that kind of thing. So.
I've got John.
Three things really. What's a bund? I don't know what a bund is. Hang on a second, but I'll do the other questions too. Second question is, obviously we're not doing the buildings that we had originally thought we should. There's going to be a phase 2 on that, hopefully. Where are they going to go? So obviously they're not on the plan now, but we need to make sure there's space for them. And thirdly, is there ever going to be any risk that people parking up to work on their allotments might take over more of the spaces that might otherwise have been used for a funeral?
Okay, so the bund is a raised area of soil. So the bund that will be the spoil that comes out of the attenuation pond and then fills up around one side of it. Okay. And the bund as well will also be, it's planned as well for when we excavate the graves, we've got an area that we can use the soil on the site over the period. So it's just an artificial mound really. Okay. Particularly the building, yes, we have considered that. It is, sorry, it's not clearly marked on there, but it is the area sort of just north of the car park that says amenity grass mix. We're keeping that area set aside for that, and we're also considering utilities. So so that we're going to get electric in there and water in there, and sort of planning a few other bits around it. And the last question.
And the car parking, did they get a conflict?
We have allowed quite a bit of space for their own car parking area within the allotments. It's hard to judge how many people are going to be there at once, but judging on other uses. I think on the cemetery, when we know there's a funeral at the cemetery, we can plan around those things, and we can, if there's an issue, we can manage it a bit like we do at the moment. So, okay, right, things if you have to.
Thank you.
Bobby.
We are going to have large sections of development coming to Buckingham, whether we want it or not in the future. I think from this committee, I'd like to propose that those appropriate times when they come forward, that we seek to use or put bids for section 106 to actually bring forward those buildings that we're unable to fund. Because if a new development was agreed
Yeah.
Whether we wished it or not, I think we should allow our officers to go away and say, well, actually, we're going to put in these buildings for the cemetery into that section 106, because it is a public amenity.
Yeah.
And it is amenity land. So I'd like to propose that that's what we agree based on this report for stage 2.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second,
Anthony and I will second that.
Why I've mentioned section 106 before I got to the next one. I've already worked out where I was going.
Yeah, thank you. I meant to ask before. I'm sorry, maybe it is obvious to other people, but where are the actual burial plots?
So
You see that clearly the allotments are marked.
yeah, the plan probably isn't the best for, so it's the areas to the west of the car park, got 2 large square areas there, and then the squares opposite to the other side of the road. They're the different main sections, and then sort of the hedged off areas towards the end. We've got family areas where people can buy multiple plots in a sort of low hedged off area, and a child's grave area. And then there is a slight section that's on an angle that fills in. So that's the sort of first phase. 750, 60 plots will be in that first stage. And then when needed, sort of the stage 2, as it were, there's a lot more graves and it'll be plotted out properly when we move on to the next stage.
On the west.
You mean the white bits on this map, like the white areas?
So yeah, the lights are. The lights are where it's, I don't know how well you can see, it says species grass, and like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares or rectangles. That's the main growth areas. Smaller areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Harvey.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the second recommendation is that we agree to begin public consultation for the revised plans and related costs. Seriously? I mean, we've done a public consultation on this, we listened to the consultation, and we have to do another consultation on this plan? Let's see.
That's the advice that we're getting from the Public Works Line Board because the plans are now revised, the amount to borrow is revised, and although Councillor Sturchby mentioned it's budgeted for, it's precepted for, of course we don't know how much it's actually going to cost because the gilt rates are so volatile. So when we actually come to apply for the loan, it will be whatever rate it is when we apply. So there's no guarantee that actually there won't be an adjustment to next year's budget and precept. So all the advice that we're getting is that we should seek a consultation to get broad support for the process. Having said that, of course, it is a necessity, and the Public's Loan Work Board have been known to grant a loan, even if the support isn't as broad as we would like it to be, because it's a necessity.
So can I respond to that? Okay. Can I therefore say, if, when there's another public consultation, that any communication that goes out and anything that's written on the webpage goes through this committee first?
Agreed.
Nothing goes out without us as a committee okaying it, because last time we did not have enough information about the full history of why we got to where we got to. That must be in there this time, because people need to know the full facts about why we are where we are. That wasn't in last time.
I
don't know about
that we're not able to do that.
It's the next meeting until October.
Yeah.
Summer.
If it's not started, it will not be done in time for.
And in terms of the questions that are asked, they are laid down in detail. We are told that is the question that you must ask in terms of the wording.
Yes, but I read through the guidelines, and there's nothing in the guidelines that prevents us from putting in the full story of this. Nothing in the guidelines that stops us from doing that. There are certain requirements about what you have to say in terms of precept. Sorry, Chair, let me finish this. then I think it's really important that this committee has oversight. If necessary, we'll have a special meeting for doing so, because I'm not having that again, going out in a rush without the full information, and therefore the public not being fully au fait with the whole situation of it. I'm just not having it.
It's not for me to say. I'm not a member of the council.
Well, that's my proposal.
Next extraordinary meeting.
This committee is assigned.
We can't hold extraordinary.
Yeah,
meeting.
we can do that.
I'm proposing an amendment to 1.2, that members agree to begin public consultation, but only after this committee has agreed the text that goes out and on the website. That's my proposal for an amendment to that recommendation.
Can I check? I made a proposal. I said we agreed it. I don't know at that point whether it was seconded, and an amendment to it. I think if I was going to agree to any amendment, what I would say is that I don't think we need to get into the complicated detail around this plan, because we're being just as fastidious about that as what the public would be. We don't need to be fastidious, we need to be purposeful and direct. So I think everything can be catered for by having, if the chairman believes it's necessary based on the committee's views, that we have an extraordinary meeting to discuss this before it goes out into the public, or to be informed. What we can't do is write this. What we're not able to do is draft this document, and what we're unable to do is do that, because this document has to be included with the consultants that we've agreed, the people we've paid, and whatever. And if we're not careful, we'll be the ones who slow this down. We've had enough political slowdown of this, John. We had to wait 5 years for our planning application to go through. At this stage, we need to rocket along with it. I would disagree with one comment. There's no point in us talking about gilts and whatever. If gilts go up, the precept will have to adjust. That'll be a decision for the precept.
Yeah.
How we adjust that. To say that we would raise it now, we can't do that, because we can't prejudge what the precept to do this meeting.
That's right.
But we can only discuss that at that meeting. So if I was to support any amendment, it would just be that with agreement with the chairman and the vice chairman, that if it's necessary, we have an extra meeting to discuss this information. I'm not going to support slowing this down in any way.
If I could just add, the advice that we've received so far is that, having gone to consultation, what the response that we got, we've amended the proposals to take into account what the public said that they wanted. So the guidance we're getting from the board is that we simply go out and say, you asked us to amend this, this is the revised proposal. And it's almost that, really. There's no background of detail to go in, is the advice that I'm getting. It's simply a case of, that was our proposal, you said no, you wanted one but didn't want to pay for it. The chances are there'll be little or nothing that we need to pre-set for it next year anyway, hopefully.
Yeah.
We just need to ask that question again.
Yeah.
Are you happy now that we've listened to you?
Yeah.
And they are the new proposals? There's not a lot of information that I'm being advised to send out.
Okay, so I wonder whether we could have a preamble to it with a history, which would be background information, but not part of the actual questionnaire. Would that work to alleviate some of the committee's reservations about this?
Some of that be, sorry, would some of that be part of the information you put out anyway? Would you be giving any background information?
The guidance we have so far is to say, this is what we told you last time, this is what the question we asked you last time. with the costs and the proposals. This is the response that we have. We've listened to what you had to say. So this is our new proposal. Are you now able to support that? And the question, they will guide us on what question we have to ask.
Because taking John's point on board, it would be useful to and say whether it would be part of it, how long our current cemetery will last for, things like that, so that that history information is in there.
Yeah, that is information that we've already issued.
Yeah, but it'd be good to say that.
Yeah,
again.
Place it all into,
Yeah, the idea is
into one place.
to regurgitate the information we had before. It was all on our website. People were directed to that from the leaflets handed out and by QR codes that we sent out. And I went out with other staff to actually survey the public, and the consensus was clear that they know they need one. They didn't want it to significantly put the precept up to pay for it. The overwhelming answer was yes, we know we need a cemetery. They just didn't want the add-ons of the building and so forth at that time because of the costs.
Okay. Thanks.
Anthony.
Thank you. I'd probably take on board what John has said. My only thought is that the more information we give, bearing in mind people are great at reading headlines and not the small print, is we've got to be very careful not to become hostages to fortune, where people pick over it and pick bits out and cause arguments and problems for us. That's all. So it will have to be very, in fact, I would say a great big long preamble is exactly what we don't want. What we want is very clear, simple, bullet points of single syllable basis. You see what I mean? It's making the points, but making it absolutely so people can see almost in a glance. That's my thoughts anyway. Is that fair, John?
I think the important one to say.
I've got Margaret.
Oh, sorry.
Apologise.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'm with John on my angst that we're having to do it again, but so if we have to, we have to. But I remember in discussions before the previous consultation, we have to be very, very careful the questions we ask, because we can't ask leading questions, for instance. So you do support this, don't you? Because we really need it, you know, because of X, Y, and Z, you know, we've really got to have this. So we have to be very careful how we present that. And I think it, you know, as Steve said, the Public Works Loan Board is very thorough on what they allow and what they don't allow. And I think that was, we were in a sense hamstrung with what we could do in the first place. So I think we've got to be very cautious about what we ask for.
John.
It's not that tight. I've looked through the document. I've done some analysis of the document. It's not that tight. Obviously, we can't ask a leading question the way that you're saying, Margaret, and certain information has to be given, and it was. But there was nothing preventing us from, in the original consultations, giving a bit more background, a bit more context. And it was the lack of that context that I think got in the way a little bit. I think I agree with what Steve's saying. I think to keep it brief and along the lines of what you said, we heard this is the result. Okay, we cut the budget, we pared it back so that there's going to be no or very little precept increase, if any, next year. We're working within the budget that we had already set. And that's fine. I think that keeping it as brief as possible, Steve, I think you're right on that. That said, I do think we need somewhere, if people want to research into it, click a link or somewhere, the history of this.
That's kind of what I was
so
trying to
just
say.
a timeline which just shows how long we were working on this, and shows, and this was a critical piece of information that was missing from the first consultation. It shows that this was approved in a town-wide referendum as part of our existing neighbourhood plan. That fact was not mentioned, because that is critical. This is why we're doing this. People wanted this as part of our plan. So I think it's got to be in the timeline that people can refer to if they wish. That's the whole point of having that context. But I say, I agree with Steve, keep it as brief as possible. So people say, yeah, fine, go ahead, let's do it now, get on with it.
Robin,
I'm glad we're getting to where we should be on it, and I do understand all the concerns, because I know I've experienced some of those questions, and I think what Anthony suggested, which was the precise click point of view, is the way forward. Question I was going to ask before we went into that was about the planning. Right, knowing that our experience with planning on this hasn't been exactly crisp, quick. It took them 5 years to get to a point when we found out at the end of 5 years they'd actually done a Section 106 agreement on it. We were actually ever asked whether we wanted it. What conversations have we advice have been given around the actual timing for the planning of this? What I don't want to re-experience that ever-loving hand of Aylesbury over this now. The ever-loving hand has probably cost this community thousands of pounds by delaying it for 5 years. That ever-loving hand of Aylesbury tied us up into the Section 106 agreement, which we didn't request, we were not party to. That ever-loving hand of Aylesbury has been the burden to where we've got to, because we wouldn't be discussing today what we are today had that not been so. We're probably discussing who's going to be buried in there tomorrow. So I think that we do have to be very careful that when we have a very frank and direct conversation with the planning department, and they are aware of the vulnerabilities around this, because it will become a political issue if it's out again. And for some reason, we are unable to fulfil our obligations as burial authority, which I think they need to be aware of, that we are the burial authority, because they probably don't know, they probably never ask, and they probably not informed themselves of these facts. So I think we have to point out that that is a responsibility they have to recognise. They hold it up as a planning authority. They're actually acting against the agreement they had with us that we would be the burial authority, and I think they need to be pointed that out to them. But I'm not minded to be quiet if that happens. I will go completely full gun at them.
Well, I think the plans are nearly ready to go, aren't they? Once they are, I'm sure we can accompany them with something along those lines that the expediency situation. Can I make a comment on the consultation? Going back to that briefly. Would it help if, because of the urgency and expediency of all this, would it help if perhaps we may on behalf of the clerk commitment to include the history, for example, that John says is missing from the previous one, and that you give the clerk permission to proceed, perhaps in consultation with you as chair of the committee, rather than have to call another a meeting and potentially delay everything.
Yeah,
Be happy with that?
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. Brand will protect our
yes,
interests.
so if that's
I'll propose that.
proposal, are you happy to take that?
yeah, I'm happy to say that. I mean, I want this to go ahead as
Yeah.
quickly as possible. It frustrates me that there's another.
I've got
Yeah,
a couple
so agree.
quick questions, which I think Lee might be able to answer, and it's sort of come up this afternoon. It's been being discussed on the Facebook group. Are people still able to book plots in Brackley Road Cemetery?
So we have put a hold on pre-purchasing burial plots and have done for some time now.
Yeah.
As we get people the need, we have plots available. Active plots, people can pre-purchase active plots, that's fine. Yeah, that's still basically.
So as plots are required, they are available to purchase. And if somebody wished to buy a double plot now, if their partner was to unfortunately pass away now,
We still do go out side by side.
side by side, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you very much, Liv.
Can I just ask, how many have been booked already? Percentage wise, I guess.
Of the new cemetery.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of waiting lists. I haven't got exact numbers on that.
Right.
People that will contact as soon as things are available will contact
Okay.
about. We haven't set prices for the plots and things like that yet. So there's also a bit of a list of people. If there are any plots available at the old cemetery and the new one opens, we said we'll hold people's details. I've got their details and just update them as soon as we.
Okay.
That's really useful information. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Robin.
Can I suggest that lastly in the thing that we make it clear it is a municipal cemetery, not a consecrated cemetery, because we are a changing community, and if you have a consecrated cemetery, that then doesn't, as the community evolves over the next 20 to 30 years, it then becomes very difficult for to use that cemetery, and we shouldn't be consecrating it. Anyone who's burial, they get their, if they have a Christian burial, the priest can come and consecrate that grave. That settles that. But to do the whole thing as a consecrated cemetery would put out large sections of the community. Every likelihood in 30 to 40 years' time, the community will be far more similar to other communities, and would have a cemetery that they could use. And I think that's a really terrible thing to do to people. And I think to make sure that the red flag goes up on that. And lastly, to say that I think the chairman raises a very good point about the discussion around availability of the cemetery. I think that's a separate issue to this, but I think it's poignant that we allow the chairman to, with the officers, to do a press release around the availability in the new cemetery and where it is, to show that we actually are managing that situation and to make sure that the information they receive is from the council and not from the gossip. And I propose that we allow a press release around that.
Right, press release from the centre. Should we have a I think we're a little bit, I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves.
No, not the cemetery, the old cemetery discussion that you brought to us about the availability. They're two separate questions. And I think it's important that we, if this carries on, that we allow a press release to be drafted in the drawer to go out, because there is a danger that miscommunication around this thing, and the fact that we've got assurance that it isn't going to run out for a period of time. We need to be open with people.
I mean, it couldn't hurt to put something out before this even, to say, you know, this is the information. Currently we have X amount of no spots, X amount of ashes spots, we're okay for, and then this will come along. And it's almost like that. It's in their heads then, isn't it? So if I'd second that something goes out. So I'll just try and jump a little bit.
Proposed by Councillor Suchary, seconded by Councillor Donahue, that we have a press release around the current situation with Brackley Road Cemetery.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, those in favour? Against? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, and I think we really need to move on to a vote on the recommendations from this report.
I'll second that we go with recommendations.
Thank you. With
the amendment.
Caveat the amendment. There's some.
Because some information to be issued with the care of this committee.
Okay, those in favour? Something unanimous.
No.
Thank you.
No. No abstention.
Okay. Right, so update from representatives on councillor bodies. Anything from you, Councillor Suchary?
Only just to say that there's going to be a consultation on scrap metal, which you might want to be involved in. If you're interested in scrap metal, it's out there at the moment, a consultation on scrap metal. More importantly, it does involve this committee. There was a consultation on dementia provision in Buckinghamshire out there, and as health is a remit of this committee, that might be something that we might want to discuss. And sadly, for information purposes, for this committee's purpose, there was a proposed vote coming from the opposition side at the Buckinghamshire Council that other groups should be involved in the drafting of the Buckinghamshire plan. They were advised that they were not needed, and that the controlling group were quite capable of making all the decisions through the chair, with the planning chairs, the cabinet members, and the senior directors of planning. So that was lost, and the controlling group now own the Buckinghamshire plan, effectively, because they voted to exclude other people from it. So how that works now until 6 months' time, when we can go back again, who knows? But at this present time, that's a difficult situation to understand, because all decisions around everything is going to be affected. And where we have parks, where we have such and such, where we have facilities, we don't have facilities, all those things are in a very small number. And the Constitution, they've chosen to use a subgroup to do a major project in the council. Subgroups, I believe, are only for doing minor projects, not doing a major project like a development plan for Buckinghamshire. But it's all in the public domain. The discussion was rich and fluid. I did partake in it somewhat, and that's there, so you can make your own mind up about that if you want to. I think it's a sad day for everyone if they're not going to have an open discussion about these things. Because whatever happens, it'll be a small group of people deciding it presently, and where we fit in as Buckingham after that would be difficult to judge.
Can I just ask quickly, is that okay? Will that then go to your main body to be spoken about, talked upon, voted through?
The Councillor Stuart Hilton and myself took a motion to Buckinghamshire Council seeking for the Constitution to be set aside, so that the subgroup would work on proportionality rules, which in politics and political groups you have proportionality rules, which means that however many of one group is elected in a council, they do a mass number, and then you have groups, but they've decided to maintain the subgroup.
Yeah, the decision from the subgroup, is it going to go to, I understand all the fact
we know not, because
right.
We know not. I mean, that may appear at some point that they're choosing. Right. They may then come back to consult Buckinghamshire councillors about their decision, and then expect it to go through a party whip to a final decision. But we're a long way off the Buckinghamshire plan being finalised and drafted, and we're a long way off knowing what the final numbers are, and we're a long way off knowing what their decision basis is, and we're even further off the opposition knowing anything but they've discussed, because it's all been done in a subgroup. And what could possibly go wrong? Heaven forbid, this will be the third local development plan I've been privileged to watch go through, and it's probably going to be the worst at this rate, democratically. Just for information, whatever fault they had with our district council about this, they set up a scrutiny committee chaired by a councillor for everyone to be able to go to that scrutiny committee to raise pertinent questions about this throughout, and it was all done in the public. Which was, whether I agree with the council or not, I thought that was a good thing. I thought the chairman who chaired that, even though we weren't politically aligned, was a very good chairman, and he had a good meeting. And one of the district councillors at the time, Lou Munger, took full advantage of all those meetings and played a very active part.
John, did I see your hand up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's with regards to the dementia consultation. I can't see that that's live yet on the Buckinghamshire website. I've just been looking for it. So in consultation, there's a link. If you can send it down to us, that would be great.
consultations on my Facebook page, and that was taken from their page. And if the link isn't live, it rather.
I guess putting consultation in the venture into the Buckinghamshire Council.
So it's not in.
Comes up.
That's very worrying. I'll go and check.
Okay.
Tap on my own links. I presume they were still live. They were live when I posted. And there was a link posted separately on Buckingham What Matters the other day. Someone posted it separately. It was on there the other day with a big blue goose flying through. It's not a swan, we look like a swan. I've seen swans fly before. It really is a goose. Flying through the sky. But I'll get back to you.
Do that for councillor Harvey. That's brilliant. Okay, thank you very much.
There's an autism strategy consultation. You don't need that.
I think there is some consultation finished.
No, I probably misspoke. Thanks, John. What I meant is there's an autism consultation which is on there. Okay. What I meant to say was there was a the dementia thing that's gone out, and there's a policy across the two things over. Thank you, John. The dementia policy, what they put up is out for public to observe, which is on the page on the questions on dementia. That is what Buckinghamshire Council accepting the recommendations from the Health and Scrutiny Committee, and their dementia strategy is available to read. And that's what I meant to say. It's not a consultation. Their strategy is available to read. But that is on the page. I've also put on my page. I've also put up the strategy around autism, which has just come out recently, which they're trying to consult on. Does that help, John? Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
I mean, I can easily send you the stuff across. But when you're dealing with so many different things with health, it's very easy to slip from one thing to another.
I've just found it, John. I can forward it to.
Autism or dementia?
No, dementia.
Okay, if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We'll move on.
That was a good discussion. No, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good. Buckingham Community Wildlife Project. You'll see the next meeting held on the 21st of June.
Just to say, I thought they were very good notes. And what I was concerned about when I read those notes, that if you read those notes, the influences on who does what were interesting, in the sense that the Buckingham Society were very complimentary about the way the team look after our sections of areas, but they were not so complimentary about the way Buckinghamshire Council look after their sections in the areas. I don't know how we can, because this is an outside group, not a council group, but we have Zoom people on it. So I think that we need to look at some of those questions they are, and there was a big discussion in there, which was worth discussing, their concerns about the old churchyard and the fact that they were concerned about the trees in the old churchyard and the maintenance of those. So I think that's something that we can't take responsibility for. They also, their conversation around the railway walk, straight scenic walk, points made, but I do think that they're considered, these are abbreviations of that meeting, but they have considered those things. So I don't know how through our officers we can just clarify some of the points of ownership and that to make sure that something doesn't go on thinking that we've got responsibility for something, and point them towards or ask those questions and concerns that they've raised around the wildlife projects and such in other areas. But they were very complimentary about Buckingham Town Council stewardship of their areas, which draws my attention. So I put feather in all your caps.
I'm sure they who attended that meeting will cover any issues that he thinks that.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the meeting, really, just point them in the right direction. I think doing what.
But these aren't your minutes, are they? They're not your minutes.
Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. Can we just not just note them, but thank the individuals concerned, you know, who give their time to keep these footpaths in a good condition and are monitoring the river and trees and things like that. Just because I think there's a lot of volunteers hours represented here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Margaret.
And it's really good news that we've got funding till March.
Yeah, really good news.
Just hope that we can find a coordinator at the end of that.
Okay, so Mow May, report from the State's Administrator. Who's not here, but yeah, I'm passing it over to you.
So it's from Nina, some great work in to explain what we do. So actually, what we do is actually better than you not knowing May. I think we leave sort of quite large areas, particularly the bypass and where we can, and it's actually having some quite a bit of success. So we've got beetle audits around the bypass and a rare vetch, I've forgotten the name of, which I think we didn't know was there quite recently. So yeah, I think the main recommendation is to sort of highlight and communicate this a bit better. So the main recommendation is to do a communication or press release now, and then a similar press release before next season, so probably February, March time next year, to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it a bit better.
John?
I'll support that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to let people know why things happen and don't happen, and just map it out and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Robin?
Well, firstly, thank you to the States, Nina, for doing this work. I think it's really encouraging that we found things like bee orchids and rare vetch. That shows that if you let nature have a chance, it's amazing how she can recover. I'd ask through the chair to you, Lee, how are we communicating this success, in the sense that this report shows a definite success in our actions, and at what point, as we reach the, we're going to be reaching the point where we are doing some now. We agree that once we start going forward, that we use this report as a basis for communicating.
That's what Lee just said.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
How are we going to communicate that?
So press release,
Social media,
social media, probably again, March.
Yeah, so before the next study season, so every month.
That's better than, because there are people who still think we should go a billion green.
There's other people that think we should just let everything grow. But yeah, I'm like, if you don't have wildflower meadows, etc., it has to be managed, because otherwise the grass just takes over.
Sure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You've got things like the cemetery to think about, where it's not suitable in certain areas, but there are big areas that we're leaving, but particularly in the older part of the cemetery, where it's a bit less used by regular visitors, and it's working quite well. And similarly in the parks, particularly around some of the play areas, which we do, it is better to keep the grass a bit lower, particularly like broken glass, quite dead obvious. Helps us keep the areas clean and safe. So lots of different things to think of.
Robin?
Just that photograph of poppers on the report.
Yeah.
Striking, isn't it? And we have got, running up to Remembrance Day, have got field of poppers and such, and the relevant.
They'll be gone by then.
I know, but the photograph won't be gone, Fran. No. The photograph will still be here. It doesn't actually perish. But I think that in any communications we do around that type of thing, it's quite a good backdrop for that communication, because it's quite poignant when you see a poppy in that sort of grown in the field. We could use that as a backdrop to,
So we have to receive this report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You love us.
Who's back again?
Okay, so action report. Received report on Updated information.
Noted.
Robin,
I've got a concern that I believe that we'd agreed an action in regards to the seat outside there. I'm not sure where that action, that we were going to bring that forward for discussion, whatever. I think it,
I don't know.
listen, no, I think it went to council. It was a full council decision.
Full council.
I think it was a full council decision. I've never seen anything. So can I suggest that maybe we have a discussion in the office where we pick that up? Where we pick that up, because we've never had a report back of any progress about it. And we've nearly passed this time when people might want to sit on that seat. Been awfully successful, that seat out there for community people to speak and talk. And if they weren't going to, there was a conversation which I believe officers and officers are aware of, where we were offered some sponsorship to actually replace that bench. And we haven't progressed it, in to the best of my knowledge. Maybe we have progressed it and we just haven't discussed it. So I think it's only fair that at some point it comes back to somewhere.
Can we look at where that's gone?
I'll ask.
Thanks very much.
Because I will be going to council asking questions and putting it back on there if we don't.
Thank you, Robin. Did I see another hand up? No, we didn't. No. Okay, so news releases, we have agreed to have news releases on the current situation in Battery Road Cemetery, the current situation on bridges, thing. There's something else, isn't there? Was there something else?
So I can't.
That's it, yeah, that's quite enough, isn't it?
But there's also going to be news release in there in consultation, but that's not a news release, is it? About the plans we agreed.
That's not usually,
No,
no. Can't do news release and something that you still.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Chair's announcements. So I have one thing, which is concerning the area just outside here. I've been quite concerned for a while about the it doesn't show a very welcoming and tidy entrance to our town from the main car park. Nina and Lee have been in conversation with some other parties, which I can't name at the moment, about getting it tidied up, sorted out. So as soon as we've got any proper news about it, I will update you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Good news.
Date for the next meeting is Monday, the 2nd of October. If there's no other business, I will conclude this meeting. And we shall move to private session.
So we just need to have a vote on going to private session. It's split.
All those, yeah.
Yeah, we go to private session.
Yeah, bear with me while I do that.
Period of the